Hey guys, it's Sabrina. Today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in December. I'm actually cutting this a little bit short because I'm reading like a huge book right now and I don't think I'm going to be finishing it before the end of the month. But there's like a little bit of a nagging fear in my heart where I'm like, but what if I do and then my December wrap up isn't complete? So I'm going to do anything I can to not finish this book this month. But that's just a tangent. I read 6, 7, kind of 6 books. 6.5, 6.1 maybe. And they're all hardcover. I did not stick to my TBR. Like 3 of these books were on my TBR and the rest weren't. So it's a fun little surprise for you guys. You guys don't know what's going to be on here. Anyway, let's just get started. The first book that I read in December is The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas. This book follows our main character whose father was a political outcast and was killed. Shortly afterwards, her and her mother are kicked out of her home and they have to stay with their mother's extended family who do not treat them very well. And so to get out of this position, she marries the first rich man that proposes to her. And she's very excited about this because it means that she can go home to his hacienda and she can have a home of her own for the first time in a while. Her mother's very upset with her about this decision because this man that she married was on the opposite side of the political spectrum from her father or betrayed her father, something like that. I'm a little hazy on the details. But even though she's excited to get to the hacienda, as soon as she gets there, she realizes that things aren't quite right. And with the help of a local priest, she works to set things right, I guess is how I can describe this. This book, I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I can't really put a finger on why it's not getting a higher rating from me, to be honest. It's just a feeling. I really enjoyed the writing and I really liked the gothic atmosphere. I thought it was really compelling and it was very lyrical. I also I liked the ending and I really liked the critiques of the caste system and colonialization. And again, gothic haunted house vibes. What else could you want? But just there's something about this, especially towards the end, that just really stopped my interest. I was really into it in the beginning and then slowly as it went on, I take back what I said about the ending. I did not like the ending of this book. I don't know why I said that. I guess I like the very ending, but I don't really like how all the big action items concluded. I thought that it was just the easiest way out, to be honest, and it was kind of disappointing. In particular, the reveal of the ultimate villain or whatever, I just found very predictable and anticlimactic. And I think that kind of ruined the book for me. And then from there, the rest of the ending, the way that it just fell into place felt very convenient. So even though I liked how the story for both the characters ended at the end, I didn't really like how the story wrapped up, if that makes any sense. I think it's 2 different things. I do think I would still recommend this, though, because if you find the idea of a gothic haunted house atmosphere interesting, I think this is a good one to read. That's all my thoughts. Next is a book that I have a lot of thoughts on, and that is A Haunting on the Hill by Elizabeth Hand. This is a book that got the rights, not the rights, but they were approved to use Hill House in this novel. So this is kind of a modern day take on The Haunting of Hill House. It follows this playwright who is working on a play, as a playwright does. She's from New York City with her girlfriend, and then one day while they're vacationing in upstate New York, she stumbles upon Hill House. And she's instantly attracted to it. She instantly drives up to it and she is like, I need to work here. And luckily she's received a grant to work on her play. Luckily is quite a word to use there. But luckily she's secured a grant to write her play with. So she uses that grant money and she convinces the current owner of Hill House to let her and her friends stay there while they're working on developing the play. So the main characters are this playwright, her girlfriend, their male friend, and a famous actress who is going to be starring in the play. So they all arrive at Hill House and, as Hill House does, it draws them in, but it also freaks them the fuck out because there's something wrong with the house. I enjoyed this. I'm giving it 3.5 stars, I think. This one was really hard to rate for me because I enjoyed it while reading it, but I do actually have a lot of critiques of it. So, it's hard to weigh those things against each other, but I think I mainly rate for enjoyment. So, I think, enjoyment-wise, this would be more a 4, but I'm taking it down a notch or 2 just based off of my critiques, so 3.5. For the most part, I've really enjoyed this. I read it in only 2 days while I was still working, 8-hour days, and studying on top of that. I just couldn't stop picking it up. I really wanted to know what happened. I think the author did a really good job ending each chapter with almost, not a cliffhanger, but with something that made you want to continue reading. I saw a lot of reviews on Goodreads just complaining that this wasn't as good as the original book. And for me, it's like, duh. Like, I don't think you can really go into this expecting it to be as good as The Haunting of Hill House. For me, I went into it just kind of like viewing it as a story that was inspired by that, almost like a fan fiction, but not in a bad way. Like, I don't think fan fiction is bad, so I'm not trying to say that. But I think, like, you just have to view it as a story that's inspired by the first story. And I think that's the way to go into it, because I really think that helped with my enjoyment of it, because I wasn't such like a stickler then. But at the same time, I do have some critiques based off of the first book, because I love the first book so much. I will say, for the most part, I liked how Hand, like, played with modernity with the Hill House. Like, they had cell phones, but their cell phones, like, never had service, except for one time when they, like, did for some reason, which make no sense. But the cell phones, like, rarely had service, and she also played with time with the cell phones. Like, one character will look at their phone and realize that hours have passed, but in the same amount of time, another character will realize that only a couple minutes have passed. So, like, I liked how she played with how, like, Hill House worked with technology. And then their phones were also always dying after, like, having just been charged. I just liked how that worked. I also like how she included similar things from the original tale, like the fact that there's these caretakers, but they won't go there after dark, the knocking noises, the whispering, etc. But at the same time, some of the additions were just a bit questionable, I felt. For one instance, something that I found really confusing, actually, is that the book makes multiple references to, like, a family staying there in the 80s. And at first, I thought that was a reference to the TV show, but it wasn't, because ultimately that story was completely different from the TV show. Like, there's a little boy that, like, killed people with poison or something, and I don't know. Like, I was also like, is that trying to be a reference to We Have Always Lived in the Castle? But that wasn't a little boy. Like, I don't know what that was getting at. And there are so many references to that, and it just really confused me. But maybe that's a me issue. Like, maybe there is something inspired by Haunting of Hill House set in the 80s that I just don't know about, but I just kind of wish they had left that out. Like, I felt like it didn't really add anything. It just made me so confused. There's also another edition where there's, like, a witch living at the base of the hill that Hill House is on, and she is, like, there to protect people from Hill House, but also for, like, the energy. I don't even know why she's there, to be honest, now that I'm saying this, but I feel like that kind of takes away from the oddities of Hill House. Like, the women who are all connected to Hill House, this witch, the owner, and one of the housekeepers, they all have these, like, magic rings where they can communicate with each other. And so this book is kind of, like, accepting magic as a fact, whereas the original Hill House didn't really. And I feel like that almost takes away from the strangeness of Hill House, because, like, in the original book, well, I guess the characters in the original book are there because they had, like, supernatural things happen to them, but they're there because that makes them special. Whereas in this book, the supernatural is just, like, more commonplace because of the witch being there. So I feel like it really takes away from, like, the scariness of Hill House being supernatural, if that makes any sense. That's just how I feel. She also adds in, like, hairs, like rabbits' hairs, like those kind of hairs. The characters are constantly seeing these black hairs everywhere, and it's never really fleshed out what they are. Maybe the author did try to flesh it out, I just didn't understand, because there's something about it being connected to the witch, but I don't really know. And I just feel like that didn't really have a basis in the original story. I feel like that took away from it as well, because it was like a constantly reused symbol in this book, and I just didn't understand it. And it doesn't have any basis in the first book at all, so I thought that was kind of a weird addition. I also felt that way about the door that one of the characters magically finds. Like, he finds this door in his room, and that door ends up being, like, really important to the plot of the novel. I thought that was weird too, because it's kind of like a magical door in the end. And I think that, like, the strangeness of Hill House is that it's a regular house. It's just, there's just something a little wrong with it. Like, there are the knocking and the voices and the apparitions and stuff, but other than that, it's just a house, and there's, like, something wrong with it, and, like, the energy kind of, and that's, like, the scariness of it. It doesn't have, like, magic like that, so I think that took me out of the story a bit. I think it takes away from, again, the creepiness of Hill House if it's just, like, this magical place. So, like, all in all, I suppose I don't really agree with a lot of the stuff that she added to this book. But I did still really like it. I thought it was a fun read. Look, I liked my time with this book, and I would definitely read more by the author. I think, like, again, you have to go into this book not being super attached to the original and like not expecting that in this book. I think if you go in with that expectation, that you're gonna like it. I did really enjoy this book, and I would recommend it. Just don't be as critiquing as I am. Just like have a fun time. Oh my god, it's been 15 minutes already. I've just been yapping. I need to hurry this up. Anyway, next book is The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. I gave this book 3 stars. This book essentially follows a young girl who, how do I explain this? She's an orphan, but she does have an aunt. And she can do like small magic. She is also a Jew, and she's like hiding that because of the, what's it called? I can't think of the word, but like Jews are like being persecuted during this time in history because it takes place in historical Spain. So she's hiding that. She can do these small magics, and she's also hiding that. And she's also hiding the fact that she's related to her aunt, because her aunt has like hidden her identity and is now like a mistress for this very influential man. And at the beginning of the book, essentially, she does magic in a way that makes her employer realize that she has magic. And then her employer kind of starts bringing her out as like entertainment for her guests until she receives the attention of the powerful man that her aunt is the mistress for. And from there, there's like a magical tournament. There's like the interest of the empire versus trying to stay away from anything demonic. And there's also a man named, oh God, I don't know how to say his name, Santangel or something like that. I don't know. In my head, I just kept reading it as Santa Angel, which isn't right. And he's like another magical creature that his story is more complex, but I can't really go into it because it's a spoiler. So I gave this book 3 stars, and I do feel like 3 stars is actually pretty generous for what this book is, but fuck it, honestly. I spent the majority of this book very, very bored. This took me like 10 days to get through, which is unusual for me because I'm usually finishing books much quicker than that. But I just did not want to pick it up for the longest time, and it took a while for things to like pick up. Like even at the point where we're at the magical tournament, in my head I was thinking like, oh, this should be more entertaining than it is. I'd say like shortly after that, things did pick up and I started getting interested in it, but it just took so long. So like it did start picking up, which is why I gave the positive rating, because I did end up liking it at the end. But I do find this a bit disappointing for Leigh Bardugo, who usually has no problem getting my interest in her books. Like, I love Leigh Bardugo as an author. I've loved basically everything she's ever written. Even the YA stuff I've read as an adult when I don't really read YA anymore, and I've still liked it. So this was a bit of a disappointment, like not instantly loving it like I've loved her other books. And I do also agree with some other reviewers that like the themes in this are pretty weak. Like it's not really exploring anything interesting. The stuff about class is very like on the surface, same as the stuff about like misogyny during that time period. I don't really think it's saying anything special or unique. At the same time, though, I do think it's just like a nice story at the end. Like having finished it, I did like it. It just took a lot for me to get there and a lot for me to like it. So I don't really think this is one I would necessarily recommend. And honestly, I should not be giving this 3 stars as I'm talking about this. It should be more of a 2-star book, but I'm going to keep it at 3 just because I think it's a nice story at the end of the day. The next book that I read was Ghosts by Dolly Alderton. This book follows the main character, Nina, who's in her early 30s. She's single and she's totally okay with that. But then one day she decides to download a dating app just for the heck of it. And she meets this guy and she totally like falls for him. And then he ghosts her, hence the title, Ghosts. She's also dealing with the fact that, like, since she's in her 30s, a lot of her friends are at a different stage in life than her. Like, she is very successful in her career. She owns her own apartment, but she's still single. And a lot of her friends are married and having children. They're just at a different point in their lives. And it's, like, kind of creating some hostility between them. So I give this book 2.5 stars. I really have some mixed thoughts on this one. On the one hand, I liked it. I thought it was, like, compulsively readable. I liked the writing. I just thought it was, like, very easy, very fun writing. And it only took me a day to read it. So I can't really say it's, like, a terrible book because, well, I guess you can go through a terrible book in one day, but this wasn't the fact for this one. I liked, like, the blend of humor and seriousness, but I think for me this book felt too personal to things that like my insecurities. Like her having such a hard time finding a guy to date and like her insecurities revolving around being single and stuff like that felt a bit personal to me, and it hurt a lot to read. Even though I'm younger than her, I feel like I'm still dealing with some of the same shit. So I didn't like that part. Like it wasn't fun to read because it was just like thoughts that I have and like insecurities I'm dealing with that I didn't really want to read about. And I think a lot of time like reading about stuff that you're going through can be cathartic, but for me it was just like, oh my god, like I'm gonna be in my 30s, I'm still gonna be dealing with this and it's gonna be awful, and men are still awful in your 30s, and what the fuck am I gonna do? So I had a little bit of a crisis reading this, not gonna lie. It just made me feel dread for my future, but that's a me problem. I don't think most people are gonna have that problem reading this book. I also just don't think this is gonna be very memorable to me. I think like the most memorable part of it to me was the fact that she is best friends with her long-term ex, and I'm also best friends with my ex that I dated for a few years. But that also hurt because she's like, her ex now has a partner, and then he ends up getting engaged and married to her in the book, and I'm like, oh my god. At the thought of my ex getting a partner and getting married, like that thought, it makes me want to die. Like oh, I'm getting too personal on here. But again, just the dread part. So I don't think I'm going to really memorize this. I don't really think this book is going to stick with me other than the part about like her relationship with her ex. I don't really think the plot or the characters are going to stick with me. And overall, I just think it's an alright book, which is why I put it like directly in the middle rating wise with a 2.5. It's just not my usual genre. So maybe like this would be perfect for someone who reads more contemporary stuff, reads more stuff that has to do with like romance and just living your life, but it's just not for me. After that, I picked up The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. This book follows an actress whose husband died not too long ago. She's turned into an alcoholic because of it, and she's kind of like ruined her career, and all of her friends and family are like mad at her for the most part. And so her mom sends her to live in like their family lake house, which is in a very rich area in Vermont. And one of her neighbors across the lake has like a very modern, like all glass house. And she starts spying on them through binoculars and like taking an interest in what's happening in their lives. And she eventually meets them and starts pretending the wife. And then the wife goes missing, and she's convinced that the husband has killed her. So she's like spying on them. She's like trying to enter their house. She's like contacting the police and like telling everyone about this theory. And everyone's just like, you're an alcoholic, like shut up and let the police do their job. But she won't. She won't let them do their job. Which is good at the end of the book, I guess. I gave this book, again, 2.5 stars. This book just felt very mid to me, which was kind of disappointing because I really liked the other Riley Sager book that I read. But I have a feeling that maybe his other books are going to be more towards the, mid than, like, enjoyable, like The Only One Left was. Because The Only One Left was the synopsis that I found most appealing. So I have a feeling I'm not going to like his other books as much. But anyway, on to this book. It was a compelling enough read, and I was interested in it the whole time. Like, I read this book in, like, a day and a half. So, again, like, I did really, like, lose myself in it, which is always a plus in a book if you're reading for escapism, which I do. I find the alcoholic, unreliable narrator trope just to be kind of annoying. Like, I have alcoholics in my family, okay? So, like, I have nothing against people who are dealing with that disease. But it's another thing to be reading about it, and then every single page is like, and then I had another drink, and another drink, and another drink, and another drink. And it's like, I get it. I get that she's an alcoholic. Like, I don't want to read about all the different drinks she's drinking. But maybe that's just me. And for me, there was like a big paranormal twist in this book, and that just felt way out of bounds for me. Like, I did not get where that came from. It just felt like a weird way of adding a twist in. I wish there had been some more build up to that, like maybe some previous mentions of the supernatural nature of this area or something like that. Like, I just felt like it came out of nowhere, and it bothered me. All that said, it was still entertaining. I don't have like strong thoughts on it. It's just not a favorite. And again, hence me giving it exactly a middle of the road rating at 2.5. Then I picked up a book, did not finish it, so I don't have much to say about this one. But this is The Muse by Jessie Burton. I got on the second page of this book and I gave it up. Because in the very beginning of this book, so I don't know the synopsis because I didn't get to read it. I know that it takes place in like dual timelines, it's historical fiction, has something to do with an artist. But I was on page 2 of this book, and on the first page it's talking about how the main character works at a shoe store, and then it talks about how she had one customer who didn't have any toes, so neither of her feet had any toes. And then the book is like making fun of this customer, and like of her disability, and it's talking about how grossed out they are by it. And then the one character calls her Stumpy McGee. And I'm just like, what fucking year was this written in? Because this is a decently... Okay, I'm going to check the year. This is a modern book. Like, this was not written in the 70s or something. 2016. 2016 is too modern of a book to be making fun of disabled people. Too modern of a book to be saying Stumpy McGee. Like, oh my God. And I'm like, I read older books. Like, my favorite book is The Bell Jar, which is a very problematic book and says very awful things about people, to be honest. But it's an older book, so on one hand, it's like you have to deal with the fact that times were just kind of like that, which isn't an excuse, and I have very complicated thoughts on this subject, so I'm not trying to get into that. But just for such a modern book to like be making fun of disabled people so like gleefully, I couldn't take it. I had to put it down right away. So I'm gonna be I DNF'd this. I'm not gonna be reading it again. I'm gonna be getting rid of it as soon as possible. And then the last book that I read in the month of December was Mama by Jessica George. This book follows our main character, Maddie, who is living at home. She's 25. She's working just this like administrative job that she doesn't like, and she's taking care of her father full time, and her father has Parkinson's disease. Her family is from Ghana. Her mother and father are from Ghana. And so her mother basically lives there full time. She goes there for a few years, comes back to London for a year. But for the most part, Maddie's just taking care of her father on her own, except for like a nurse that comes in and takes care of him sometimes. And then towards the beginning of this book, Maddie moves out, and she's kind of like finding herself for the first time and trying to like not feel guilty for not being there for her father and trying to live her own life. I gave this book 3 stars, and rating this book 3 stars really makes me feel like I need to rate some of these other books lower, because I did genuinely like this book, but I struggle to say anything about it other than I liked it, to be honest. Okay, I just had to restart my camera, so I completely lost my train of thought. What was I saying? I do not know. So essentially, like I said, she moves out, she's trying to find herself. I liked this book. I gave it 3 stars. Oh my God, what did I say? I'm forgetting everything I just said. Let me look. I found the main character, Maddie, to be really endearing. I liked being inside of her head because she's kind of like speaking to you in the novel. And I really felt for her. Like, I felt for her guilt and her love for her family and her people-pleasing tendencies. I also really liked that she was in her mid-20s and she was still trying to discover herself. Because I feel like a lot of like these coming-of-age books focuses on teenagers, people like just entering their 20s. So even though, like, it's not, like, oh my God, old age discovering yourself because she's only mid-20s, I still like that she was a bit older and still, like, dealing with some of this stuff. I especially liked that she was 25 and still a virgin and trying to deal with, like, dating and sex as she moved out of her house. I also really liked that, like, she didn't like sex the first couple times that it happened, and she was, like, kind of against it almost. Just because, like, I feel like, first of all, for the virgin thing, I feel like a lot of girls just feel this pressure to have sex as soon as they can because they don't want to be a virgin, like it's a bad word or something. And I kind of liked how this book kind of serves to normalize, like, no, it's okay to, like, take things at your own pace and not feel that pressure. And then also, like, I think it's more realistic portrayal of sex to not be immediately like, oh my God, this is the best thing in the world. That's all. That's my personal thoughts. Yeah, I just like this book, and I don't have much else to say about it. I would definitely recommend it if it sounds interesting. I had a really nice time with this book. Maybe not a nice time, because it is a sad book in many ways, but I think you get what I mean. So there you go. Those are the books that I read in December. I will not finish another book in the month of December. I have like a week left in the month, but I will not finish another book, I promise. After this, you're going to start seeing all of my end of the year content. I know a lot of booktubers start posting that in December, like worst, best books, every book I read this year. I can't do that. For me, I'm like, there's still time. There's still time where I could read another book that would be the best book of the year. And then what if I didn't include that in my best book of the year video? So I'm going to be releasing all that in January. So hopefully you'll enjoy that. If there's any specific end of the year content you want to see down below, let me know. Oh, I did not say that right. If there's any specific end of the year content you want to see, let me know down below and I will make sure to make that video. Let me know your thoughts on these books and what books you read in December. And I'll see you soon with another video. Goodbye.